Thank you very much, everybody, for joining me once again. My guest today is a former Essex cricketer. He's very well known in the fast bowling coaching circles around the world. He's a renowned pace bowling coach. He's worked for franchises around the globe, including Quetta Gladiators, where he had a very successful stint. And he's also got his pace bowling academy in the United Kingdom, where he nurtures and produces a number of excellent fast bowlers. The one and only Ian Pont. Ian, thank you very much for your time.
Saj, thank you for having me on again. It's always great to talk about fast bowling. Always.
You know, as Pakistanis, we love chatting about fast bowling, Ian.
Well, it's synonymous, isn't it? You think Pakistan, you think fast bowling. The two tend to go together. So, yeah, it's good.
Let's start with Mohammad Ali. Somebody who, we know he's played a couple of tests for Pakistan, and nobody really thought much of him as a white ball bowler. He's been phenomenal in this PSL so far, 13 wickets. What do you make of him, Ian?
Well, it's interesting, actually, because when you think of a test cricketer, you think often that those skills are not transferable. But let me just explain why the skills are transferable. First, you need to be consistent. And he's been extremely consistent. Secondly, in T20, you have to be able to deliver on your skills. And he's been able to deliver on his skills. And thirdly, you need some tricks. And he keeps it really simple. He hits 6 to 8 meter length away from the batter, which is a hard length. He bowls 85 to 90 miles an hour, 88 miles an hour on average. I mean, he's got a really good pace. So he hits the splice to the bat. He looks like with his release that the ball's going to angle in and then it hits the pitch and just straightens up. So it looks like it's coming in and then leaves you. And he's got a great Yorker. So if you put that together and he's got a really good head on him, you've got a very good cricketer. So in a way, it's not a surprise he's done well. I suppose it's great news for him. And it's a breakthrough that Pakistan have unearthed potentially another great T20 bowler, but he's been part of the glue that's held that Multan Sultan's bowling attack together, and they've just been incredible.
On the topic of Multan Sultans, Ian, one person's fortune is another's misfortune. Ihsanullah, he was the big thing, did really well at the PSL, and he was regarded as a very bright prospect for Pakistan as well, bowling at close to 150 kph and above. You've obviously watched him bowling. Is he going to be injury prone? He's had this elbow injury, he's had surgery, and he's struggling. What do you make of his bowling and his action?
Well, I think generically his bowling action's okay. I mean, there's nothing necessarily in that's injurious. What I would say is that when you release a cricket ball, obviously you're releasing it with your wrist coming forward. So as you rotate your arm round, you want your palm and your wrist to be upwards as it goes past your shoulder, and then you flick the wrist. He has his hand this way round, which a lot of bowlers do, and then they have to turn it. And actually, if you pull your arm up, I know I'm bending my arm because I can't get it all in shot. But if your back of the hand's pointing upwards when you pass your shoulder, you have to really quickly rotate that wrist. And if you keep rotating that wrist, you're actually rotating the elbow. Now, some bowlers do that. Dale Steyn, who I work with, he was here and then rotated really fast at the last minute. But some bowlers like Sean Tate had huge elbow injuries. And if you look at the way some people bowl, sometimes they go what's called knuckles up rather than palm up. And as your hand passes the shoulder to bowl the cricket ball, we're trying to be in position just to be able to flick the wrist at the end. So I think he has what's called a late turnover. There are other couple of issues with the base alignment, and he could do that a bit better. He could block his energy a bit more and transfer it into the top to give him, ironically, even more speed and make him a lot more consistent in his accuracy. But specifically with the elbow, I think it can be related to that rotation of the wrist at the last minute. Listen, that's something that is redeemable pretty easily, to be honest, and it is not detrimental to change it. You don't lose pace by doing it. So I don't want anybody to think you're here to make a change. No, you're here to make an improvement. And particularly when someone is now suffering from injury and they're missing out on a fantastic competition when they should be playing in it and being successful. A simple little tweak like that. But he's got to get fit first. Then he can make those improvements as he goes. But generically, I mean, he's a great prospect. I love to watch him bowl. And as you say, 150 clicks. Not everybody's getting it down that pace. That's serious heat when he's bowling well.
Speaking of serious heat, Naseem Shah, when he's on song, he can certainly get that ball going and moving as well, which he has been doing in the PSL. Most Pakistani fans, however, though, every time he bowls, our hearts are in our mouth because of his injury problems. If Naseem Shah was handed to you for a week, Ian, what would you say to him in terms of his bowling action and workload, and for him to actually be injury free?
I mean, in a week, yeah. So look, I think what you do in a short period of time is you, as a coach, you give information. So you have a look at someone and you say, look, this is what you're doing, and large elements of this are fantastic. Here are things you could do better, and they're worth working on when you have time to do that. One of those things is where his feet point. His front foot tends to point almost like an off-spin bowler across himself. So in other words, instead of his feet pointing down the pitch, his front foot, it blocks him off. And that creates a lot of stress and tension. He's also what we call steps across his action, which means that he looks like he lines up to fine leg with his feet, but he's trying to bowl outside off stump to a right-hander. So the way he lines up, he would bowl well to a left-hander. And then, of course, with that alignment, it has to swing because otherwise you're going to bowl into a right-hander's pads all the time. So there's a couple of things. A base alignment would be the big thing for him. Also, when he bowls, he does the head's the heaviest part of your body. So wherever that tilts, that's the way you tend to go. Look, none of that's disastrous at all. But it's made him a little bit inconsistent. And what we're trying to get is fast bowlers, and Pakistani fans must hate this word talent. There's so much talent in Pakistan. There's always talent here, talent there, talent there. But how do you develop it properly? That's the thing. And just with some small refinements, he could actually line up a bit better. And I think that would genuinely help him to bowl more consistently and stay not injury-free, because look, fast bowling wrecks your body anyway, but as injury-free as possible. Let's say that.
You've obviously been watching the PSL, Ian. Any observations regarding the quality of pace bowlers? Is it still fairly high standard?
Well, what's impressed me actually is it hasn't been the overseas pacers that have been impressive. It's been some of the locals. I mean, I watched Multan because of Catherine Dalton. Obviously, she's my protege and she's coaching with Multan Sultan. So specifically, I mean, I'll use them as an example because they had injuries to Reece Topley before the PSL even started. They lost a bowler there. They replaced him with Ollie Stone. Ollie Stone played one game and got injured. Chris Jordan turned up injured. David Malan, I know he's a batter, but he's been injured. David Willey then as vice captain, then he got injured, so he's missed a game. So they've actually relied on Mohammad Ali, who has been absolutely fantastic with his 13 wickets, as you said. They brought in then Aftab Ibrahim. Aftab came in and he's part of the Treen Academy. They threw him in the mix. He's done really well. They had Dahani there, who struggled a little bit because he's been a little bit offline with his stuff. And they got Abbas Afridi. But I think that the fast bowling attack at Multan has been strong enough, and the spinners have been fantastic as well. So you asked me specifically about fast bowling talent in Pakistan who's impressed me in the PSL. It's actually been the spinners, I think, in this PSL who have really shone through. And let me explain why that's happened. Some of the bowlers, fast bowlers, as soon as you miss your length and as soon as you miss your line, it's going to the fence. I mean, genuinely, that's it was Babar Azam's innings the other night. The 100 he got was absolutely brilliant. It was just a beautiful 100. And he is the 3 format player. And you can see why, because his technique's so strong. You bowl him a bad ball, it's going to the fence. Other players, like I watched Colin Munro innings today. I mean, he's a fantastic player. He's inventing shots. But you don't see Babar Azam inventing shots. He just plays proper cricket shots. You bowl him a bad ball at pace, it goes to the fence. The skill, I think, of fast bowling, ironically, in T20 is pace off. Is actually when do you reduce that pace to the batter rather than just put the pace, because I think pace on the ball has been going to the fence, and that's been part of the problem.
You mentioned Dahani there. He seems to be a bit off colour at the moment.
Yeah, he's just struggled for consistency. I mean, the pitches have not been fast bowling friendly. Let's be honest. I mean, they've not raced through. As I said, I watched a lot of the Multan games. In Multan, the pitch is slow. It sits in the pitch a little bit, which is good for cutters and good for spinners. But the fast ball, it's not roaring through 150 clicks past your head. I mean, it's not flying through. So you have to get a bit smarter. And if as soon as you bowl slightly offline, and a couple of times he's missed his length and his line, and it's just gone. And unfortunately, if you're bowling in a power play as well, I mean, there's nothing you can do about it. It flies to the fence. And we've seen some of the better bowlers getting smashed to the fence as well. It's just been one of those competitions where I think the batters and the spinners have been more dominant than the fast bowlers.
I'll speak to you about Haris Rauf, Ian. Even before the PSL and his horrible injury, he'd been struggling of late. We're used to seeing Haris Rauf bowling fantastic Yorkers, especially at the death. But he's just been smashed to all parts recently for Pakistan as well. Any observations about his form?
Well, I don't think it's a technical issue with him. I think this is just part of life cycle, unfortunately. I mean, it's confidence ebbs away. When you start to have a bad time, it's very difficult in your mind to just put that to one side and go, I'm going to bowl again. I'm going to bowl again. And it's something the Multan Sultans have done. Sorry to go back to them again, but they have this phrase called warrior. And what they try to do is play fearless cricket. And it's really hard to do that, because if you've just been hit for six and the next ball you're hit for six again, as an example, or two boundaries, you almost don't want to bowl. You almost want to hide and say, look, take me off, because you don't want to destroy your bowling figures. And Haris Rauf has been someone, I think, over a period of time that hasn't been on top form. But as they say, form is temporary, class is permanent. And I think he's a classy bowler. And I think he will come back round again. I just think he's in that cycle right now that whatever he seems to do isn't quite working. And his confidence, you can almost see it draining out the body when you're bowling and it isn't what you want. It doesn't mean you can't bowl. It just means you don't have that confidence to deliver on your plans. And I think that's kind of where he's suffering right now.
We know that Shaheen Shah Afridi is a world-class bowler in all three formats. Recently, he received criticism for being down on pace, about 135 kph, 136 or thereabouts. Suddenly, he's gone up to about 145 kph. Ian, have you noticed anything regarding his bowling? Any changes? Anything different?
No, nothing. There's nothing different with his action technically. It's very hard to. So let me just back out of that comment for a second. It's very hard to make a technical change unless you deliberately want to do it. So technique takes time to change. What we got to remember is that someone like Shaheen Shah Afridi, his body's still growing. You know, you don't mature fully to your 23, 24, 25, your bone structure and your bone density. So he's bowling a lot of overs. And I mean, I'm guessing he's probably bowled 900 to 1,000 overs in a year. I mean, I'm guessing at that, but it's going to be an extraordinary amount because he's playing three formats and he's playing franchise stuff, and he wants to pull on the Pakistani shirt all the time. He wouldn't want to rest. He wouldn't want to do that. So I think that's really impacted on him. Now, the PSL has given him the opportunity to own. Obviously, it's a 5-week tournament, roughly, and you're only going to bowl 4 overs in an evening, 24 balls. I know he's captain as well, which is an added pressure. We tend to forget that. You're captain of your franchise. You're thinking for everybody else. But I think actually he's relishing having these 5 weeks where he's at home. You know, he's in his own country. He's amongst his own people, countrymen. He feels relaxed. At the moment, they're still champions. I don't think they're going to be this year, but, you know, and they come with a lot. They bring a lot to them. But a lot of people like the Calendar side. I mean, they've got a great setup there. It hasn't clicked for the franchise, but he's bowled well. He's swung it again. And the thing about him is, I listened to Waqar Younis talk about his wrist position. He was correct. When he gets his wrist position right, sometimes he can lose it. But your comment was about his speed. It looks like he's running in again. He wants to run in again. It might just be the opposite of Haris Rauf. Actually, this is his up cycle. That actually this is his time. But But look, it's really hard to bowl the amount of overs he's bowled in a year and still keep your pace up. And there's no wonder it drops away. I mean, it happens to a lot of bowlers. I mean, it's just part of the natural cycle of stuff, if you like. But he is such a serious cricketer. And I'm happy to see his speeds back up 144, 145 again. Fantastic.
Finally, Ian, there's two schools of thought in Pakistani cricket at the moment regarding the under-19 bowlers. You know, you've got the likes of Zeeshan and Ubaid Shah, who played in the under-19 World Cup. They've been picked for PSL franchises. There's one school of thought saying that these young lads should be at the high performance centre, working with the coaches there, rather than playing in tournaments like the PSL. Where do you sit regarding that?
I think if you're good enough, you're old enough. And you should always be exposed to the highest level possible available to you. Ubaid Shah is a serious, talented cricketer, and Mohammad Zeeshan as well. They're both guys that I think have a future in the game. Now, it does depend on how they're managed. It depends on how they're handled, which is what you're alluding to. Should they be thrown into this comp? To be fair, you find if somebody can swim, can't? If you throw them in the deep end, it's sink or swim. It doesn't define you if you have a bad couple of games or a bad tournament. It does not define you at all. What it does, it teaches you a lesson. And it depends how you take that. So if someone underperforms, it's not what happens to you, it's how you deal with it. So if you have a bad run and a bad time, you go, okay, what have I learned from that? What could do better? Let me try that again. And that it's that characteristic you're looking for. In the old days, we used to say having a big heart. Do you have a big heart to bowl fast? Look, fast bowling's tough. It's a batter's game. The boundaries are brought in, the crowd are wanting to see sixes and fours. It's a batter's game. It's hard work as a young kid to come running in and see these big bats smashing you into the crowd. It's hard, but it's also where the money is and it's where the glory is. So you have to balance that up and say, if I have a great PSL, even if I'm a bit part player, does that launch me towards an international career of my country? Heck, it does, yeah. And I think that's the balance you have to have. If I was a 17, 18, 19-year-old being chucked in the deep end, I'd love it. I absolutely love it. You talk about youngsters. Naseem Shah was 17, wasn't he? He played Test cricket. So I don't think this is ever an issue. I don't think it's ever an issue to be thrown in and say, show us what you got, and we'll see if you can cut it at this level. And actually just learn from it. It's an experience that you need to learn from.
Well, Ian, thank you very much for your time. It's always wonderful to hear your views and insight on pace bowling, especially Pakistani pace bowling. And hopefully we'll catch up again very soon.
Thanks, Saj. All the best, my friend.
Thank you very much, Ian. Take care.